He
So
could
it's
1 inch punch me.
so I appreciate this has been a great time. So we do have a lot of questions. We're going to try to speed through these as fast as we can. We got until quarter two, so I'm going to go really fast. So thanks so much for your super chat. Totally appreciate it. Stefan Steen, let me know if I'm mispronouncing it. Said Steve said I had too much time on my hands. Laugh out loud.
He does. He comes up with these memes and these gifs, and they're incredible.
That's so funny.
And so he has entirely too much time on his hands to be doing that kind of stuff. But I love him. Don't stop.
Totally appreciate that. Thanks for that. And Snake was right. Thanks for your super chat. He said, "My position is that the theist claims are badly formulated and fail the burden of proof. I have no other opinions about God's existence. What am I?"
Okay, run that by him again. He has no other
You bet.
positions on what?
He said, "My position is that the theist's claims are badly formulated and fail the burden of proof. I have no other opinions about God's existence, so what am I?"
Well, you're anything that you label yourself to be. But if you're asking me how that would be understood in philosophy, I would put that under what's called evidential agnosticism.
Gotcha. And then Duke, you can answer too, because they never actually specified who they'd want an answer from. So Kim, if you have an answer.
What category he falls into?
Yeah, if he only thinks that the theist fails the burden of proof in their claims.
Uh, it doesn't matter what the theist says or claims. What matters is what he believes. If he believes in a God, then he's a theist. If he doesn't, he's an atheist. Now, if he doesn't believe the theist claims and fails to believe in a God, then he's an atheist. That's it. It leaves room for nuance. It doesn't mean you've made a claim. It doesn't mean that if you fail to believe in a God, you claim there is no God.
Gotcha. Thank you
Nobody's
very
arguing
much.
that.
Next.
Yeah, nobody's arguing that.
Stefan Steen, and we'll give you a chance to respond to Kim or Steve if it addresses you. Some of these are frank, but they're not brutal. So he just said Duke doesn't realize Steve won before the debate began. So if you want to respond to Kim, you can. You don't look like you believe him, Kim. So if you want to respond, you can.
Well, first of all, I believe that Steve probably has more fans than I do. So they probably believe him more
I have
than
a lot more detractors too.
But if it's a failure that I have convinced them that he's wrong, I would like to say that I wish we had a little bit more time to speak our piece, because we've been talking about philosophy this entire time and have been ignoring the other group of atheists in the atheist community that do not respond to anything that has anything to do with philosophy. I've agreed with him about how philosophers use the terms, and I disagree with the philosophers.
Gotcha.
And that's it.
You got it. Thank you very much. Sorry.
Yeah, can I add on that real quick?
If it's super short and pithy.
Real short. When you're using these topics, this is you cannot talk about theism and say it has to do with philosophy. These are philosophical discussions. Period. If you talk about the word theism, you're in the realm of philosophy. You cannot extricate that from that. That's
Wonderful.
like saying,
I think
yeah. So I wanted to point that out.
Wonderful. When you're talking about the existence of God, we're
Sure.
talking about philosophy.
So
But we're talking about the uses of the words and how people use the words. It's not really that philosophical.
I got sorry to cut in on you guys. So we got Snake was right. Said thanks for your super chat. He said, "Isn't it Gnostic atheism in philosophy?" Maybe I wonder if part of it got cut off, but I think I got the whole question. Isn't it Gnostic atheism?
The way a Gnostic atheist is generally inferred, if you use that type of epistemic modification, it means, or inferred to be, somebody who not just holds a belief that there are no gods, but also knows or claiming knowledge that they have no gods. It's modifying. If you have a position, like example, like theism, the theism is going to be the position that there's a God. That's just a belief claim. Okay, so when he's talking about a theist who believes there's a God is making a claim about ontology that the God exists. So if they modify that with knowledge, saying that I just merely don't believe, I also know, because knowledge is a subset of belief. You have to believe something before you can know it. Then they're modifying that. So a Gnostic theist is generally understood if they're using that terminology. I don't particularly care for it, but it's fine. They're just saying that that they don't just have the belief, they also know. They're modifying that belief to raise it to a higher thing of knowledge.
And you agree with that or not?
Weird. I hate to, I'm so sorry, guys. Just to try to fly through as many as we can. We got 20 minutes left. Forgive me, but writer John Buck, thanks for your super chat. He says, Steve's just a secret Christian apologist, LOL. so it's nice.
I know I'm going polytheist. Ocean is taking me under his wing, only because I think Odin is really cool. Not that I think he exists, but
Super interesting.
I kind of agree with that.
yeah, Odin's pretty cool, man.
An Odin apologist.
He's very wise.
Sigifredo Sarabia, thanks so much for your super chat. He says, if everyone used colloquial terms and the beliefs are neither true or false, even though that itself is believed, how is someone judged, right or wrong, without shared meaning of at least some definitions?
Yeah, well, right or wrong are value judgments, right? I mean, I think he's agreed that how I'm using these terms is consistent with the literature. Now, I've had atheists argue that I'm using them incorrect in relationship to the literature. I think we've established that's not the case. Anybody who thinks
That's dishonest, Steve.
Well, I'm not saying you are. I'm saying that there are atheists that have done that. That's not dishonest. That's a fact.
Your argument is dishonest.
My argument's dishonest?
About the literature as if people are defending or saying something about the literature. And they're not talking about the literature at all, and that's what I've been saying this entire time.
I'm telling you what atheists have argued with me. Okay, I've done this for 6 years. I can tell you for a fact. I got people in the live chat that can tell you for a fact. Atheists have made videos on this saying that the way I'm using these terms are inconsistent with the literature.
And what I'm saying is that what you're saying to me, knowing that I am not talking about the literature, that I have different literature, other atheists that defend the term atheism as how I define it, use completely different literature. They don't use yours. So when you go on Twitter making debates with people...
When I say the literature, I'm meaning the body of evidence that's in the field. Peer-reviewed papers, the journals, those are the literature that I'm referring to. That when I mean when I say the literature, that's what I'm talking about in academia, not what American Atheist puts out as a blog. That's not the literature.
Gotcha. Thank you.
This is why colloquial gets confusing, because I use terms specifically for a reason, and yet people are like, oh, well, I'm using it a very general way. That's what leads to confusion. You just saw an example of that. When I say the literature, if I was in biologist and I say the literature, I'm talking about peer-reviewed literature about biology. Go ahead.
We'll go real quick. Writer John Buck says, Duke's just avoiding making positive assertions. If you want to respond, Duke, you can, or Akim.
Yes, okay. What I'm doing is being honest about my position, all right? Now, it's very possible that we have a word, I'm using a word to encompass a bunch of different people. People who assert there is no God is an atheist. People who believe that have no idea if there's a God but just don't believe it is an atheist. I'm not running away from anything. You can ask me any question you want and I'll answer it as honest as I can. But the terminology that I'm using is all-encompassing of all people in trying to understand the diversity of this belief that we have. So if I'm avoiding something, ask that question and I'll answer.
Gotcha. We definitely understand. Thanks so much. And thanks for that super chat, writer John Buck. Next one, Sigifredo Sarabia, thanks so much for your super chat. He asked, where does agnosticism get its epistemic facts to say, quote-unquote, agnosticism is true, if the propositions of theism or atheism are not found to be true or false? Great question.
Agnosticism is not true or false. Agnosticism is defined, I'm going to say agnosticism is best understood as a psychological state of being agnostic on the proposition. And as I told you guys earlier, you don't evaluate psychological states, right? This is why we make them propositional. Atheism and theism is propositional. Agnosticism is not propositional. That is a psychological state. So you cannot say agnosticism is true or false. That's a great question on that, though.
Gotcha.
And Steve is wrong.
Writer
I
John...
keep telling me I'm wrong, but I've seen no evidence of this.
Writer
Not
John...
one citation that I'm wrong on anything.
Yeah, writer John Buck, thanks for your super chat. He said, Duke both lacks belief, but also lacks disbelief. Thus, cannot be both an atheist and an agnostic.
Right. He'd be an agnostic in philosophy.
Agnosticism is not talking about belief. It's
It
talking
is.
about knowledge.
No, that's incorrect. I mean, not with respect to the theist. Agnosticism is a state, per Stanford Encyclopedia. Agnosticism is the position of the psychological belief of being agnostic on the proposition.
According to your definition again.
According to Stanford. Now, if you think Stanford's wrong, I need evidence that Stanford's wrong.
How about the Bible's my authority? What if I use the Bible as my authority?
Oh my God! All right, so you're just literally saying that Stanford's wrong. So you're saying Stanford's right or wrong on this?
I'm saying. So do you believe that every institution is correct?
You see, this is what really kind of.
Do you believe that every institution is correct?
I'm asking you a very specific question. You don't have to accept Stanford. Do you agree that's what Stanford says?
No, I don't.
You don't agree that's what Stanford says? I have the quote right here. Stanford
I don't agree with what Stanford says. You don't have to say it. I'm telling you right now, I don't
agree. Do you agree that's what it says?
What?
Do you agree that's what it says?
Agreeing with what it says and agreeing with...
Sorry, guys.
I understand the difference, Duke. Oh my
and agreeing with what it says are two different things, Steve.
I understand the difference between what it says and if you agree with it or not. Trust me.
Forgive me, guys.
Steve is so dishonest.
I'm so sorry.
He asks if Stanford says something, and I say, I agree. That's what the website says.
That's what I want to know. Do you agree?
That doesn't mean I agree with what it's saying.
You guys, I'm so sorry. I've never had it be so spirited. I appreciate that you guys are passionate. I just saw a quick cut in. I'm so sorry.
Okay.
So, Sigifredo, Rabia, thanks so much. Let's see. For your super chat, and definitely, like, we'd be willing to host a part 2 if you guys want, because I hate cutting in. Like, honestly, it kills me to do it. But
no, this is fine. This is great. You're doing wonderful.
Sigifredo, Sarabia asks, how does someone live consistently when they believe there quote unquote are no gods and still have an quote unquote absence of belief to be called agnostic to affirm a claim?
I have no idea what that meant.
So I think so how does someone live consistently when they believe that there are no gods and also have an absence of belief? How are they consistently called an agnostic?
All right, let me try to parse it. I think they were saying agnostics do not believe in God, okay? Because again, going back to that dichotomy, you believe God exists or you do not believe God exists. Agnostics fall in the do not believe category, okay? So they're not fence-sitting between belief and not believe. I think it's a mistake that some atheists, for some reason, think that agnosticism is a fence position on belief and not belief. It's not. It is the fence position between I do not believe P. It's a fence position between I believe P is true and I believe P is false. He's a fence sitter. Duke is a fence sitter if he doesn't believe that gods don't exist. He's literally in the same position as any agnostic. Would you agree with that, Duke?
That I'm an agnostic.
You're a fence sitter.
I don't agree with your definition, but I do call myself an agnostic.
Okay, but you do agree that you're sitting on the fence between belief and disbelief?
Are you asking me if I'm a strong atheist or a weak atheist?
I'm not asking you either. I'm asking you if you're on the fence, an agnostic like myself is on the fence between belief that is true and belief that is false. Because belief that is true and belief that is false is not a dichotomy.
I am a fence sitter, yes.
Okay, so I want to make that very clear. The way I'm using these terms, and you can go look these things up, theism and atheism is not held to be a dichotomy. It's held to be what's called a contradictories. What that means is if atheism is true, theism is false. And if theism is false, atheism is true.
But atheism can't be true or false.
Let me finish. I'm telling you how it is in the literature. I'm not using your terminology. Dude, please don't interrupt me. I'm serious because I'm not using your terminology.
I'm not going to play by your game. I don't believe the way you define these terms.
Can I get some moderation? Because
I'm so sorry, guys.
Kind of important.
I think just to read as many questions as we can. I know it's important, but I have to ask if we could just keep going with the questions because we have limited time. I'm really sorry about that.
All right, that's fair enough. But again, they're contradictories, not dichotomy.
I'd be happy to have you guys both on again. I'm so sorry. So this one, I can't pronounce the name, but we thank you for your super chat. They asked, why is Steve appealing to word salad from institutions that have been invaded and conditioned by Christian apologists?
Correct.
Okay, Paul Draper is an atheist who wrote the article for Stanford Encyclopedia. Dr. Graham Oppie, who wrote Atheism and Agnosticism, is an atheist. Almost every citation I use is from atheists, with some exceptions. Malik is a theist, but there have not been. This is a weird conspiracy theory that somehow that these institutions have been, have theism involved in it. No, these are strong atheists that I'm quoting. So they do not believe there's a God. Graham Oppie, who I've had on my channel, hopefully we'll have Paul Draper on one of these days. But Graham Oppie, he uses the terminologies I use. He's not a theist, so that's just a conspiratorial, weird statement.
Gotcha. Next we have Snake Was Right, who says agnosticism can be theist or non-theist.
Agnosticism can be what?
Theist or non-theist.
Not in philosophy. Agnostic is, again, the position.
We're not arguing about philosophy.
This is all about philosophy.
But we're not arguing about philosophy.
I'm sorry, Kim.
That's why it's dishonest.
Kim, please forgive me, Kim.
I love how he thinks it's dishonest that I'm actually telling you how it actually is in philosophy. That's just weird.
I totally understand. So if you wanted to respond to that, I'm not sure who it exactly was for, but thanks for your super chat, Snake Was Right, and whoever thinks that it was for them, you can answer or give a response. I think Steve already, that was the one that agnosticism can be theist or non-theist. Maybe you already felt like you answered it.
Yeah, if agnosticism is a psychological position of being agnostic on P, theism is a position that you hold a position.